Unitarian Universalist willful ignorance and psychological denial and hypocrisy and perversion of justice and what else, you know, all of those things. You know, when a member of the Unitarian Church of Montreal comes out and erases one of my protest slogans, well, they are guilty of violating the second principle of Unitarian Universalism, which calls for justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, because they're trying to hide Unitarian Universalist injustices and abuses with censorship and suppression. In fact, they're trying to hide Unitarian perversion of justice of the criminal justice system, because when you falsely accuse a person of blasphemous libel in an effort to hide pedophilia and rape, well, that's fairly serious perversion of justice. Indeed, it's a perversion of justice to hide the fact that you got some perverts in your church, if you don't mind my saying so. So yeah, it's violating the second principle. Equity, fairness, well, yeah, it may be fair to erase my slogans, but maybe not, you know. Compassion, well, it's definitely not compassionate. Unless it's maybe compassionate for the pedophiles and rapists who you're trying to cover up and hide. But then, you know, the fourth principle of Unitarian Universalism calls for a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, which of course is very, very important with respect to the second principle, which calls for justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. When you go to court, you are sworn to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. You know, so in trying to hide the truth, you know, this is, again, a kind of perversion of justice. And it's especially a perversion of justice, you know, when you try to hide the truth in a criminal trial, or when you lie in a criminal trial, or so on. Definitely a perversion of justice. So, again, you know, coming out, erasing the slogan is a clear violation of the Unitarian Universalist principle, which calls for a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, because it makes it impossible for anyone to read the slogan and then subsequently engage in a search for its truth and meaning. They're making it impossible for anyone to try and find out the truth about whether or not Unitarians misuse Canada's blasphemy law to cover up clergy sex abuse. Now, of course, I know that anyone who researches that will discover that I'm telling the truth. But Unitarian Universalists don't want people to know that truth, so they do their very, very best to hide it. So this is a complete and utter, you know, antithesis of the fourth principle of Unitarian Universalism. And, you know, there's other principles that they're violating. And most ironically, getting back to the whole blasphemy law thing, this is not a Unitarian Universalist principle. But the fact of the matter is, Unitarians and Universalists, even before they merged to become the Unitarian Universalist Association, both religious communities strongly opposed blasphemy laws because they were victims of blasphemy laws. You know, Unitarians were, you know, basically treated as blasphemers for denying the Trinity, and Universalists were treated as blasphemers for denying the existence of hell or denying anyone would go to hell and so on. So both of those two religious communities had members who, you know, were, you know, suffered as a result of blasphemy laws, and so they've strongly opposed them for centuries. And then in the 21st century, what do? And most ironically, what do atheist Unitarians do? Because UUA President Reverend Dr. Peter Morales, I'm quite sure, is an atheist Unitarian. He's not a God-believing Unitarian. Kathleen K. Montgomery, the Executive Vice President of the Unitarian Universalist Association, who's almost certainly deeply involved in the UUA's misuse of blasphemy law, is also almost certainly an atheist. There's no indication that she's a God-believing Unitarian Universalist. So both of those two top-level UUA leaders who are responsible for hiring Stikeman Elliott to accuse me of blasphemous libel are atheists. So I basically got atheist Unitarians accusing me of blasphemy in the 21st century. I mean, that's basically, it's hilarious on one hand. I mean, it's really funny. It's just, I mean, literally laugh out loud funny. On the one hand, just the fact that they're accusing me of blasphemy. But what they're accusing me of blasphemy for isn't really funny. You know, it's not really funny to try and hide the fact that some of your ministers and some of your Sunday school teachers are pedophiles and rapists. That isn't funny. It just isn't. So on the one hand, it's a big, huge, pathetic joke that Unitarian Universalists are accusing me of blasphemous libel for any reason whatsoever. But it's completely and utterly shameful that Unitarian Universalists are accusing me of blasphemous libel specifically in an effort to cover up and hide such despicable crimes as pedophilia and rape committed by Reverend Mac Wallace Mitchell, Richard Buell, and other Unitarian Universalists. Good day, sir. So that's it. You know, it's just outrageous, really, that in the 21st century, atheist Unitarians actually had the unmitigated gall to falsely accuse me of the criminal act of blasphemous libel, and to do so in an effort to conceal from the public that some Unitarian Universalist ministers, some Unitarian Universalist religious educators, also known as Sunday school teachers, and, you know, some ordinary Unitarian Universalist lay leaders are pedophiles and or rapists. And I think on that note, we're going to wrap this up.